Okay, hello everyone, Mike Caccioppoli here. First thing I want to show is my new Jill shirts came in. This is the greater good, not vote for Jill Stein 2016. I got a bunch of shirts. Jill Not Hill, uh, bailout students, bank, jail Wall Street. Got a bunch of great Jill shirts coming. I got a bunch of great buttons coming and everything. Wanted to get that little. By the way, you can go on Amazon. Jill's store. That would be the first place I'd direct you. But they're going through what Bernie went through in the first few months of his campaign, where it's like a onslaught of people buying things. So I think they're a little low stock, and they have to get that back up. So Amazon's a great place to go. I know we have problems with Jeff Bezos. I know, but it's great to just stuff is cheap, and you can also promote Jill. So you can promote Jill. You kind of, sometimes you got to compromise a little bit, even us. So Amazon does have a bunch of, you can just Google Jill products, and a bunch of people are really taking the initiative, going on Cafe Press and making their own, and it's great stuff. There's some really good stuff out there. We have to promote Jill. I'm seeing way too many, here in San Francisco, I'm seeing way too many Hillary bumper stickers and window signs, and we need to combat that. We need to get the Jill products out there, the bumper stickers, the pins, wear the shirts around your city, and get her name out there. That's the most important thing. Visibility. And you can control that. You can wear the pin, you can wear a shirt, you can get a bumper sticker put on your car or your book bag or whatever. Do it. Visibility in these last 9 weeks is so important. It's so important. Believe me, not everyone is as politically active and in tune as we are. And a lot of people don't even know who Jill is. So people say, Jill Stein, who's that? And then they'll go home and they'll go, Jill Stein, blah, blah. And they'll go, oh, wow, I can vote for her? Wait, she says the same things Bernie said? Wait a minute, and that's what's going to happen. That's the way she's going to gain votes and gain traction. Anyway, let me get that out of the way. The other reason why I came on is what the Washington Post is back. Hillary's hit squad, WaPo. WaPo sounds like a dog food, which is about all they're good for. Dog food, dog shit is what the Washington Post has become. WaPo, the Hillary Clinton hit squad, is back. They gave Jill Stein an interview. And the first thing I saw was Jill Stein's editorial board interview, a transcript. I said, wow, this is great. Holy cow, it's long, too. It's like goes on and all the different questions. And I'm reading the questions. I'm saying, uh-oh, wait a minute. Kind of the same questions they asked Bernie, and the way they respond to her answers is the same way they respond to Bernie's answers, the same way. And I could see what was going on. And the next thing I see underneath the transcript of her editorial board review is a editorial board wrote something saying Jill Stein's, I believe they called it like a fantasy campaign, the fairy tale campaign. And I said, that's it. The same old Hillary Clinton, David Brock talking points that they must have gotten emailed to them at the Washington Post. The same thing they used against Bernie. Fairy tale, can't happen. Wonderful pie in the sky. It's almost word for word the same thing. What was really amazing was that the date and time of the attack ad in response to her editorial was actually printed a half hour before the transcript of the interview. So I don't know how you do that. How do you print the response to the interview you gave a half hour before you print the transcript of the? It's almost like this was pre-written. And you know what? It was pre-written because it was written a year ago about Bernie. Remember the Washington Post? 16 hit pieces in 24 hours on Bernie Sanders? Washington Post, totally anti-Bernie Sanders, totally pro-Hillary, totally pro-corporate America. That's the outlet that's saying Jill Stein's fantasy land, just like they called Bernie's fantasy land. The exact same playbook. The exact same playbook. They don't even try to mix it up. It's the exact same stuff. So I was going through a little bit of the Washington Post, and Fred Hyatt, he's the guy who asks most of the questions. And right off the bat, you can see hostility. Right off the bat, the questions are like, well, how about experience? You don't have the experience, do you, for this kind of thing? And then Jill Stein goes on to give the experiences. She said something like, it's not like brain surgery or something. You appoint the right people, you have the right things in mind, you have good issues, you know what you want to do, and you appoint the right people to do it. And she said something like brain surgery. And they go, what, brain surgery? You mean the presidency? You're calling the presidency not brain surgery? What are you talking about? When you refer to it, do you mean the presidency is it? Meaning the presidency is not brain surgery, not rocket science? Come on, the presidency is so complex, Jill. How can you say that? So she goes on to explain herself. And then comes, after all these set up questions that are basically the same questions with the same attitude. They went right into it with, we think we know we're pro Hillary, we're going to bash you, but we're going to go through the motions anyway. Because, by the way, Hillary won't do these interviews. That's not a problem with the Washington Post. It's not a problem that Hillary won't talk to them. It's not a problem that Hillary hasn't done a press conference in 300 in almost a year. That's not a problem. That's fine. That's fine. Hey, she's got the experience of not doing press conferences. That's her experience, not doing editorial board interviews. I don't have to. You know what? 'Cause she's the queen. She's the queen of fixing elections. She doesn't have to do this stuff. Do you blame her? She can fix elections the way she fixed the primary with the party and Debbie Wasserman-Schultz. So why should she go through the motions of doing this when it doesn't matter? It doesn't matter. And they're going to endorse her anyway because she owns them. You see? Do you see how this works? That's why Bernie had to do them, and Jill has to do them, and Gary Johnson has to do them, and Donald Trump would have to do it if he wants. Hillary doesn't have to do it, and they'll never criticize her for not doing it. Could you imagine if Bernie Sanders said, "No, I'm not going to talk to you," or Jill Stein said, "I'm not"? They say, "Oh, look at these. Look, they're too afraid to even talk to us. How could they be president?" Do they say that about Hillary? No. Anyway. The worst offender, of course, is not Fred Hyde, even though he asks stupid questions. Jonathan Capehart. Oh, Cape. The Cape Man. I used to laugh at the Cape Man on TV, like on MSNBC, because he was always so, like, nerdy. He was always nerdy. Nerdy and kind of white. Really white. Maybe white's not the right word. Maybe I'm thinking of, like, privileged. Quite the privileged black man, Jonathan Capehart. Yeah, I'm sure he knows what it's like to grow up, you know, constantly having the police on your back or being profiled. I'm sure he knows all about it. I'm sure he went through all of that. He knows what it's like to wear a hoodie and be shot for wearing a hoodie, or being shot for talking back to a cop, or knows what it's like to be shot in the back. I'm sure Cape knows all that stuff. I'm sure he's really down with what's going on in the hood, Cape. Don't you think? Just looking at him, watching him talk, it's obvious he's on that level, right? Well, John, I don't laugh at Johnny anymore because he's pathetic and he's disgusting. So he mentions Ajamu Baraka calling, in some interview. I'm sure he's talked about Obama 5 million times. And in one interview, or talking to a certain audience, he said, he acts too much like an Uncle Tom. So they've jumped on that. And so Capehart says, do you think it's appropriate for someone running for president to call Obama an Uncle Tom? He used the word appropriate. So Capehart believes it's not appropriate to use the term Uncle Tom against Obama. That's not appropriate. But you see, what is appropriate, which is totally appropriate for Jonathan Capehart, is that his significant other works for Hillary Clinton. His significant other works for Hillary Clinton. And all Capehart has done for the past year and a half is bash Bernie Sanders and kiss Hillary Clinton's ass in the paper and on television. Every chance he gets. What a coincidence. Does he disclaim that his significant other works for Hillary Clinton? Does they have to put that in his articles that he writes when he bashes Bernie or bashes Jill as he's doing now, or praises Hillary? Does it write that my significant other, just a total disclaimer here, I want to be on the level, my significant other works for Hillary? Is that in his profile? Is that underneath in his bio when he's on TV, bashing Bernie or bashing Jill or kissing Hillary's ass? Does it say Capehart's significant other works for Hillary Clinton? No, of course it doesn't. And that's totally appropriate. John thinks that's totally appropriate. Totally appropriate. Nothing wrong with that. No bias there, Johnny. Anyway, the Cape Man. There's the Cape Man. And then there's Joanne Armayo. Almost like Arpaio, but Armayo. A-R-M-A-O. A-R-M-A-O, Joanne. And she says to Jill in one of the questions, this just shows what a piece of shit publication the Washington Post is. They can't even come up with unique questions. They have to use David Brock and Hillary Clinton talking point that we've heard a million times before. This is officially a question. Not a policy question. Not a policy, but this would be all policy questions when you're deciding. And usually the editorial boards do these interviews to decide who they're going to endorse, usually a week or a week and a half before the election. We'll get to that, too, in a second. But she asks this unique and original question that only a brilliant editor of the Washington Post could ask. Would you be able to sleep when you wake up on November 9th? What will you think when Donald Trump's president? Will you be able to sleep knowing that you helped to elect him president? This is a question they actually asked. The editorial board actually asked that. Meaning that they're already showing their bias, saying, we want Hillary. We couldn't live with Trump. They're already showing their bias 9 weeks before the election. Well, they've showed it all along. But when you ask a question like that, and you say, would you be able to sleep with yourself if Donald Trump's elected? You're pretty much saying we're pro-Hillary and the horrible Donald Trump. The Washington Post is saying, oh, we can't sleep with him. So anyway, so Jill answers it the way she's answered it all along. She asks, how would you feel emotionally? And Jill says, emotionally, I would have trouble sleeping if Donald Trump's elected president. And I would have trouble sleeping if Hillary Clinton's elected president. And Joanne Meyer said, that doesn't answer my question. Well, yes, it does, Joanne. You asked how she would feel. And she's telling you how she would feel. She'd feel nauseated if Trump won, and she'd feel nauseated if Hillary won. And she'd have trouble sleeping at night if either of them were president. They didn't want to hear that. They wanted her to stop after, I will feel terrible if Donald Trump's elected. Stop! Stop! Don't talk anymore! Don't, no, wait, you feel the same way if Hillary's elected? No, that's not answering the question. Yeah, it is answering the question, honey. It is answering the question. How would you feel? She told you how she would feel. It directly answered your question. But they don't want to hear the Hillary part, only the Trump part. You see? You see the built-in bias? That's built-in bias. I don't know. I haven't seen Gary Johnson if he's spoken to them. Did they ask, how would you feel, Gary, if you woke up on the 9th and Hillary was president? I guarantee you they didn't. They would help Hillary win? You take votes away from Trump? Did they ask him that? Guaranteed they didn't. Guaranteed. So you see the Washington Post hitmen, the David Brock hitmen, are out again. They put 20 bullets in Bernie's back, and now they're ready to put bullets in Jill's back. And this is what I'm going to get to now. Usually these editorial boards do these interviews. They do, and Hillary won't do it, so she's out. But they'll do the interviews, and then they'll decide. Usually, like if I'm running for mayor with 4 other people and I don't do the interview, I don't get the endorsement. They don't give the endorsement to someone who doesn't, and they simply say we're not going to give an endorsement to someone that wouldn't talk to us, which is perfectly viable. I wouldn't deserve the endorsement if I didn't talk to them. They won't do that with Hillary. Like they did with Bernie, they'll give the endorsement to the person who doesn't talk to them. That's what they did with Bernie. He did the interview, she didn't. Now, she won't do this interview either, trust me. But what they will do, usually, is they'll do these interviews, and they will decide, and they'll put out an opinion about a week before the election saying, we endorse blah, 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 based on our interviews. What I've never, ever, ever seen before, even with Bernie, I've never seen a hit piece come out like the moment after the person does, or a hit piece that was written before, obviously. I've never seen it happen so quickly. That's not what these interviews are about. They're not about writing an immediate piece about the candidate. It's supposed to go into their computers, and just before the election, usually a week, maybe 10 days, they'll put out, often it's the Sunday before, sometimes only 2 days before, they'll put out their endorsement on the front page because of this, that, and the other thing. And we think of this, that, and the other thing about the other candidates. No. Think about that. They immediately ran a hit piece on Jill Stein. Why immediately? Think about that. Why? It sounds like they want to try to stop her traction. If she didn't have any traction going, why would they care? Why would they do it? See, the interview was just a setup for the hit piece. So they could say, well, we wrote a hit piece, but we interviewed her. We gave her a chance. We gave her a chance. You see? See the games they play? The slimy, sleazy games? This is why I say WaPo, dog food, dog shit, because they are. They are. It's obvious. It's obvious. Huh. Interesting, though, that they felt they had to do this hit piece to hurt Jill 9 weeks before the election. They couldn't wait until a few days before. Huh. Wonder if someone called them. Wonder if maybe David Brock or Hillary Clinton or someone called them. Robbie Mook or Jimmy Fallon, whoever the fuck her spokesperson's name is. I wonder if someone called them and said, she's getting a little, when Hillary's gone down a couple of polls recently, Reuters, she dropped 7 points. We think those are going to Jill, not to Trump. They're going to Jill. Could you help us? We don't want her to get to 15%. We don't want her to get to 15% because if she's in those debates, Hillary's in trouble. I mean, if she gets to 15% before the debates even start, we can't have that happen. Can you help us? Could you help us knock it? That could be the difference between maybe 12 and 15 points, 11 and 15. So can you help us a little bit? That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. Not a conspiracy theory. It's exactly what happened. This is the Washington Post. I remember I was an intern. I was an intern for WABC Radio in New York. This was in 1990. and I met Howard Cosell. There he was. I was in the Yankee broadcast booth. At the time, the station would cover the Yankee games, the radio broadcast, and there's Howard Cosell. This was like opening day or something. It was opening day, I believe, in 1990. And Howard Cosell comes up to me and says, "Young man, who do you work for?" And I said, "Oh, WABC Radio." He goes, "WABC used to be a great station." My God, I'm 18 years old, and Howard, I'm 18 years old intern just getting to the business, and here's Howard Cosell. Dose of reality, kid. Used to be a great station. Well, Washington Post used to be a great publication. That's what Howard would be saying, and that's the case. They're done. I think the newspaper business is so in trouble that they feel they have to become sensational now. So they have to become sensational and put out these headlines: fairy tale candidacy, pie in the sky. They have to do something to grab people in to read them, because no one's really reading them anymore. Hillary's demo of 70 plus is reading them, but the millennials aren't reading them. The 18 to 35, 40, 45 group isn't reading them anymore the way they used to. So this is the reality. They're dying, and I think they want to get a few shots in before they die, and that's what's happened. Same thing. This is Hillary's. Remember, Washington Post is Hillary's hit squad. They're Hillary's hit squad. Every once in a while, they'll give little Chris Cillizza a chance to write he wrote a couple of pro-Bernie things. He'll write a couple of they'll throw him out there. He's their token real liberal amongst all those neoliberals and conservatives that are at the Washington Post. But for the most part, it's all 99%. It was Bernie bashing. Now it'll be Hillary. It'll be Jill bashing. It's all Hillary worship. It's all Queen worship. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. And what I did was, in that hit piece about her having a fairy tale candidacy, I wrote some comments. And believe it or not, I went through, I say going through fast, maybe 7 of every 10 comments were totally against the Washington Post. And they weren't necessarily pro-Jill, but they were like, this is not fair. You people are not being fair. And it was like, we have to flood them comments, call them, and tell them how you feel. If you happen to be a subscriber, unsubscribe and tell them that. Tell them why. Tell them why. I mean, already their subscriptions have dropped, the newspaper business. Let them drop even more. If you subscribe online, don't subscribe. Tell them why you're unsubscribing. This is very important. Extremely important. There's something else I had here. Yes, okay. Just write down this number. 202-872-1020. 202-872-1020. If I can be fancy, I'll try to put it on the bottom here. But that's not the Washington Post. That's the debate committee. The debate committee. 202-872-1020. Obviously, they're closed on weekends, but during the week you can call, or possibly you can flood their answering machine on the weekends. That's the debate committee, and people are calling them. They've already been flooded with calls saying, we want Jill Stein in the debates. If you're a Gary Johnson fan, if you want to include both of them, fine. I'm a Jill Stein guy, so call and say, we want Jill Stein in the debates. Forget about your 15% percentage, which is set by the Republican Democratic Party, and the polls that are run by places like the Washington Post. They'll find any way to make sure that they don't get to 15. Trust me. So get on them. Get on them. And say, we want Jill Stein and Gary Johnson in the debates. All 4, the 3 presidential and their vice presidential picks, Weld and Baraka, in the vice presidential debate. We want them in all 4. All 4. And we're going to be out there protesting. If not, we're going to be out there at each venue protesting. We're going to be not watching on TV. We're going to be boycotting the sponsors. We want them in debates. We want democracy. These candidates have enough ballots. There are enough ballots where they can get to 270 electoral votes. Mathematically, they can win just as easily as Trump and Clinton, mathematically. Everyone's at 0 now, and all 4 candidates can get to 270. They should all be on that debate stage. Once again, 202-872-1020. That's all for today. I've gone long enough. Mike Caccioppoli, thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you soon. Jill2016.com.